Is NBA Youngboy a drug addict? Now, Youngboy, the rap king of YouTube, has built a reputation of being one of the most transparent and beloved rappers of our time, opening up in his music about the death of his grandmother, who pretty much raised him on 38th and Chippewa, giving him the name 38 Baby. Now, Youngboy would suffer multiple losses early in his life, leading him down the path of drugs, such as the death of his best friend Lil Dave, who died when they were kids, and even losing his father to the system for 55 years for a robbery that he committed with his uncle. But this wouldn't even be Youngboy's most traumatic experience, as in April this year, Youngboy will be arrested for identity fraud, forgery, and prescription fraud, as he allegedly called local pharmacies in the state of Utah, posing as a fake doctor filling prescriptions for real elderly patients.
Well, Sylvia, the rapper may be good at making music, but according to police, he has no future in acting, as a bad impersonation is part of what got him caught.
Youngboy has a very troubled past in the streets of Louisiana, and although we've seen levels of success that are unimaginable, the mundane saying is still true. More money, more problems, and those problems came in the form of a drug addiction that will lead him down the path going towards jail. There's no secret that today's rappers cope with their superstyle lifestyle through the use of codeine, ecstasy, Xanax, and weed. Now, with Youngboy going through so much, such as house arrest for the gun case that he caught in Louisiana after he's filming the music video, as well as gun case that he caught in LA for driving around with a gun, as well as not being able to see his family and his own health conditions, it's just been a lot. After being arrested for the possession of a firearm in a 2022 Louisiana music video, Youngboy will be placed on house arrest. Now, although the idea of house arrest sounds fun with the rich rapper who has all the money in the world, all the cars in the world, and all the clothes in the world, it was the total opposite, as Youngboy grew very depressed, as he was in the house and couldn't see anybody, tour, make merch, do shows, and his health was starting to spiral as well as his mental. Just from looking at Youngboy's career, people have been trying to finesse Youngboy since the beginning of time, dating back to his record deal. Now, Youngboy signed a 5-year, 5-album deal worth $2 million, and Atlantic Records at least grossed $100 million based off that contract, as Youngboy released so much music during 2022 and 2023 when he was on house arrest, and that's why he came up with Colors, I Rest My Case, Realer 2, and he was putting out so much music to fulfill his contracts. However, they consider most of that mixtapes, so he was just going insane. Label won't let him buy his masters. Apple Music isn't playlisting him because of the King Von and Dirk and him beef, and he was just going through a lot of things mentally while he was locked up in that cage in the cell because he wasn't jailed during that time, and then he came home and went back on house arrest. Now, Youngboy had a gun case in California, which occurred when the police got a tip from the neighbors that Youngboy was driving around in the community in a McLaren, and there was a gun in the car. So the police found Youngboy and went on an intense police chase where Youngboy hopped out the car, he was running, there was canines chasing him, and they ended up arresting him, and they found a gun in that car. Now, the police were almost sure that the gun belonged to Youngboy, and they lost a federal investigation called Never Free Again to arrest Youngboy and send him to jail for at least 10 years. Now, Youngboy, being one of the most prolific gangster rappers, talking about his guns, his girls, and things that he's done in the past, the feds have always wanted to put Youngboy in jail. However, that couldn't happen, as when they took it to trial, it was revealed that there was 4 different DNA profiles on the gun, so nothing was conclusive that it was Youngboy's gun because it was a car that multiple people used. Now, the feds were extremely embarrassed because they have a 97% win ratio, and they took it to the chin and lost. They took it to court, they thought they were going to win, and they lost to a rapper who pretty much just laughed them off and stuck up the middle finger in their face. Recently, NBA Youngboy shook up the entire rap scene for a completely different reason. Now, Kentrell Deshaun Golden was the target of an investigation by the Cache County Sheriff's Department in Utah for allegedly being the mastermind behind a drug prescription ring. Now, typically the way that drug rings are ran is that people, or cartels of course, smuggle drugs across different inner cities and overseas using car vehicles and hidden compartments, cargo ships, or even putting, heroin and cocaine inside the dead carcasses of mules, right? But this was a bit different because this was local. Now, what they're alleging is that Youngboy would essentially call the doctor impersonating set individuals as an older patient so he can get certain drugs. When you're over 70 or something like that, you can get codeine pills, promethazine, morphine, a bunch of painkillers, right? So he was impersonating certain clients who had real names, of course, but they were fake prescriptions, and he would get through and get those prescriptions that he would then sell as well as consume. Now, the prosecution believes that Youngboy was having this for his own gain and only consuming it, but if he were a smart businessman actually trying to run a ring, which is what they believe he was doing, he would sell them, but he wasn't doing that as he was consuming it for himself. Police are alleging that Youngboy and his team called multiple pharmacies in the Utah area, posing as doctors prescribing fake medications for their real-life patients, particularly Reed's Pharmacy in Hiram, Utah, and Spence's Pharmacy in Logan, Utah, both on September 19, 2023, under 2 different aliases, Bethel White and Gwendolyn Cox. On September 9, 2023, Reed's Pharmacy in Hiram received a prescription called in for Bethel White with the claimed date of birth of somewhere in 1949. The prescription was called in by an individual who will further be referred to as the suspect, claiming to be a physician in the Provo, Utah area, providing an actual and valid DEA number, NPI number, and other identification for the real physician. Reed's Pharmacy discovered that the phone number that the suspect called in from was a phone number that was not the same as the clinic in Provo area, and Reed's Pharmacy contacted the actual physician, and the actual physician informed the employees of Reed's Pharmacy that they do not have a patient by the name of Bethel White, and nor did he call in a prescription to a pharmacy in Hiram. Now, the actual physician told pharmacy employees that this has happened several times today, and that they did not write any prescriptions for a Bethel White. The prescription was called in for an antibiotic, as well as promethazine with codeine, a Schedule 5 controlled substance. Law enforcement staged in a parking lot of the Reed's Pharmacy are waiting for someone to show up to retrieve the prescription, but no suspects showed up.
This is all propaganda. I gotta be honest with y'all. Again, I've been to Youngboy's house, and I think none of this shit is true. Because I would have seen it. So I just want to say on the record, I don't believe none of this shit. And I believe Youngboy is a victim of the system. But they claim that he was having numerous pharmacies, sometimes up to 4 to 5, give him pills that allegedly he was running through in a couple of days. And it turned into be a big drug ring. How did they find out? The pharmacy at times would be confused because sometimes the person trying to pick up the pills, because they were filling the prescriptions, they would say, well, the date of birth don't match. And at one point they figured out that one of the patients, the last name was wrong. The first name was right. The birthday was right, but the last name was wrong. And one of them they figured out was like, yo, you're supposed to be 60, but the person picking it up is 20. And then they figured it was a couple things going on.
On September 19, 2023, Spencer's Pharmacy in Logan received a phone call from the suspect using the same physician's information, calling in a prescription for Gwendolyn Cox with a claimed date of birth of somewhere in 1951. The prescription was for promethazine with codeine, similar to the prescription called in at Reed's Pharmacy. Now, about 2 weeks later, after the prescription had been called in, the prescription had been picked up by a female individual who we then be referred to as Associate 2. Associate 2 picked up the prescription for Gwendolyn and alleged that Gwendolyn was her grandmother. Now later, on October 9th, Spence's Pharmacy received another call from a suspect identified as the same physician, again trying to prescribe promethazine with codeine to Gwendolyn Cox. However, the pharmacist requested that they send a hard copy of the prescription with the patient this time, and the suspect hung up the phone. At this time, the employees of Spence's Pharmacy attempted to call the real physician back after looking up his phone number for a practice in Provo. Contact was made with the real physician, and he told them that he has not called in any prescriptions and that his name and credentials are being used fraudulently. It is also valuable to note that the home address given to the pharmacy for Gwendolyn was a local address in Logan. If what's being said about Youngboy is true, you gotta give Youngboy some credit because him and his team are on point. They knew the DEA number, the NPI number. They knew all the government credentials needed to prescribe medication for a doctor. Now, mind you, these are all just street ninjas. They probably found out how to do this a couple days before. And since it worked and was successful, they doubled down on the method. But when they doubled down on the method, they sort of made it really hot, and the police kind of caught on to them. It seems like Youngboy and his team were abusing the method and were very successful. Almost like a kid who finds out a new currency glitch in a game, like the GTA 5 money glitch, or even the Minecraft diamond glitch. Like, they just kept doing the glitch, thinking that it would never stop. However, their greed would be their own downfall of Youngboy and his team, as 3 months later, in January 2024, they would do another call for the third time to get more drugs, and the police realized that, hey, this isn't a doctor. Due to the dead giveaway that Youngboy's southern accent, known for his like slime, man, you're me, proved that this isn't a doctor, or at least not a doctor, from Utah, and they caught everybody who was involved. On January 17, 2024, a fraudulent prescription was called into Larry's Pharmacy in Smithfield, Utah area. The prescription had been called in by a suspect identified as a physician. The prescription was being called in for a female by the name of Gwendolyn Cox, slightly different spelling and date of birth as the one at Spence's Pharmacy, with provided birthday of somewhere in 1949. The prescription called in was promethazine with codeine, listed as a Schedule 5 controlled substance. Now, after receiving the request for the prescription, the pharmacy had found the call to be suspicious. The pharmacy attempted to contact the doctor again, but the phone number was disconnected. Now, the pharmacy searched the practice on the internet for the physician and found that he was a medical provider in Provo. During the conversation, the physician stated that he does not have a patient by the name of Gwendolyn Cox and suggested that the prescription request was fraudulent. The physician had told the pharmacy that this has happened many times, and the pharmacy had contacted law enforcement and provided the information. In addition, the pharmacy had also been in contact with someone who identified himself as Gwendolyn Cox, and they're making arrangements for their grandchild to pick up the prescription. Now, they described that Gwendolyn Cox sounded as though they were a younger person disguising their voice to sound much older. The phone numbers that the pharmacy had received calls from were later called by the pharmacy and found to be disconnected or not in service. At a later date, an agent from Cache County's Drug Task Force reached out to Gwendolyn Cox, aka Youngboy, to authenticate her and ask her a few questions. Now, the conversation was off from the start. Now, the cop would ask her what her date of birth was, and she would only give the birth month and the year, but not the actual day. And for some reason, she couldn't provide the age or her address during the conversation, so it was obviously clear that Gwendolyn was using a fake voice. Now, just listening to the conversation, how they were talking, it almost felt like a younger person was trying to make the voice sound more raspy and more older, and given the fact that Youngboy's from the South, known for words like slime, man, you heard me, it was a dead giveaway when he said the word axe, A-X-E, instead of ask, when he was speaking to the doctor, because it was either proven that, hey, you're not a doctor from Utah, or you're not a doctor at all, and both are true. The police would report two associates pulling up in a white Chevy Tahoe registered to Kentrell Deshaun Golden. Now, given that Youngboy has homes and cars in multiple areas, it wasn't really hard to connect Youngboy to the situation. And when confronted by the police, the two individuals claimed that they were just picking up a prescription for a friend. Now, the same charges of him being caught with a gun would pretty much recycle between his Louisiana case and his California gun case. Now, it seems like Youngboy has been crowned the leader of the NBA street gang. So to one people, he's a street gang member. To another person, he's toting these guns. And to us as fans, he's just the rapper, right? The rapper who we love and like his music. On April 16th, a search warrant was issued for Youngboy's Huntsville, Utah mansion, with Youngboy having an ankle monitor so he couldn't leave. So his associates had to pretty much retrieve the drugs under different aliases and deliver them to his home, particularly promethazine with codeine. Youngboy was questioned about the fraudulent prescriptions and if he had any knowledge of the activity, to which he denied. However, he was tied to the case immediately when they searched his home and found the patient's medication that he was picking up for in his home with their names on it. Youngboy most definitely isn't perfect, but I've never seen a just system aim so much attention and use of the resources to take down one particular rapper. Now, he's been involved in drive-bys and law run-ins since 2017. And on a totally unrelated note, they unfortunately got Youngboy on something as they've been gunning for since 2017. Now, Youngboy recently pled guilty to his gun charge in Louisiana. Now, as we all know, he beat the gun charge in California where there was a gun in the car, and no one could really prove that the gun belonged to him, or one, it was his car. Now, the gun charge that he had out in Louisiana of having one in a music video that they saw through an SD card, Youngboy ended up pleading guilty to it, and he's going to do a couple years in prison.